Oops. 5 everyday things invented by accident. Ever made a mistake so big that you wanted to crawl under a rock and never come out again? Well, don't sweat it. History is full of mistakes, delicious, life-changing, and wildly entertaining mistakes that shape the modern world. From your favorite snacks to game-changing medicine, this video is your backstage pass to learning how 5 everyday things were invented, entirely by accident. So, buckle up for a tour of quirky mishaps that prove one thing: sometimes, oops means awesome. Let's kick things off with a snack that's so good, it's impossible to eat just one: potato chips. Now, imagine this, it's 1853, and Chef George Crumb is working at a fancy restaurant in New York. Enter the villain of the story, a super picky customer. This guy keeps whining that Crumb's fried potatoes are too thick and soggy. What's a fed-up chef to do? Crumb decides to teach this customer a lesson. He slices the potatoes as thin as humanly possible, fries them into crunchy oblivion, and dumps an ungodly amount of salt on them. Surely, Mr. Fancy Diner will hate this, right? Wrong. The insult snack turns out to be a hit, and boom, potato chips were accidentally born. Of the story? Never underestimate the power of a spiteful chef. Oh, and maybe don't annoy the person making your food. Who knows what masterpiece might come out of it? Up, let's talk about a toy that has entertained generations, the Slinky. It's simple, it's fun, and it's one of those things designed purely to make you smile. Except, it wasn't. The year is 1943, and Richard James is working as a mechanical engineer. His job? Figuring out how to stabilize sensitive equipment on ships during World War II. While tinkering with tension springs, he accidentally knocks one off the table. Instead of going thud and lying there like a boring spring, it gracefully walks down to the floor in the coolest way possible. Cue the light bulb moment. James realizes this spring isn't just useful, it's entertaining. With some help from his wife, he refines the design, names it the Slinky, and introduces it to the world in 1945. The rest is history. Millions of kids, and adults, have been obsessed ever since. Who knew engineering mishaps could be so mesmerizing? Richard James didn't, but we're all glad he let that spring take a tumble. Moving on to an invention we all rely on when something important slips our mind: Post-it notes. These little sticky squares have saved countless deadlines, meetings, and grocery lists. But what if I told you they weren't supposed to exist at all? Let's rewind to 1968. Spencer Silver, a scientist working at 3M, is trying to develop a super strong adhesive. Instead, he ends up with, well, the opposite, a weirdly weak glue that doesn't stick permanently. It's the kind of flop most people would throw in the trash. But not Spencer. He believed his useless invention had potential, even if he didn't know what it was. Forward a few years, a colleague named Art Fry discovers the perfect use for that weak adhesive. As a church choir singer, Fry needed a bookmark for his hymn book that wouldn't fall out but also wouldn't damage the pages. Light bulb moment, combine Spencer's weak glue with small pieces of paper. Voila, the first Post-it note. It hit the market in 1980, and people have been sticking them everywhere ever since. Post-it notes are proof that sometimes failing at one thing means accidentally succeeding at something even better. Score 1 for persistence. Now, let's turn to an invention that literally saved millions of lives, thanks to one messy scientist who turned procrastination into progress. Yes, we're talking about penicillin, the first antibiotic. In 1928, Alexander Fleming, a microbiologist, was doing some serious science-wise stuff in his lab. But, let's be real, he wasn't exactly the tittiest person. One day, he goes on vacation, leaving his petri dishes full of bacteria uncovered. We've all left dishes in the sink, but this takes it to the next level. When he returns, he notices something strange. A mold had started growing on his bacteria samples, but instead of spreading wildly, the mold seemed to be actively killing the bacteria around it. Curious, Fleming investigates further and discovers that the mold, later identified as Penicillium notatum, could wipe out harmful bacteria. And just like that, penicillin was born. It wasn't an immediate overnight success, but over time, penicillin revolutionized medicine, saving untold lives by treating infections that were once deadly. Fleming's messy lab mistake turned out to be one of the greatest achievements in medical history. So remember, next time someone tells you to clean up your mess, just say, "I might be on the verge of discovering the next penicillin." No guarantees, though. After all those salty, bouncy, and life-saving accidents, let's finish on a sweeter note: chocolate chip cookies. Yes, even this iconic dessert started out as a baking experiment gone wrong. Picture this, it's the 1930s, and Ruth Wakefield is running the Toll House Inn in Massachusetts. One day, while making a batch of chocolate cookies, she realizes she's out of baker's chocolate. Yikes. Trying to save her recipe, she grabs a Nestle semi-sweet chocolate bar, chops it up, and tosses the chunks into the dough. Twist. Ruth was expecting the chocolate chunks to melt evenly, creating smooth chocolatey cookies. Surprise! The chunks held their shape, softening just enough to create that melty, gooey texture we all know and love. The accidental invention was such a hit with guests at her inn that Nestle struck a deal with Ruth to feature her recipe on their packaging, and even included Toll House branded chocolate chips. The takeaway here? When life gives you chocolate chunks, you might just end up inventing the world's favorite cookie. So, there you have it, 5 everyday things that only exist because someone made a mistake. From potato chips to chocolate chip cookies, these oops-a moments serve as a delicious, useful, and sometimes life-saving reminder: accidents aren't always a bad thing. In fact, they often pave the way for some of the best ideas. Next time you mess up, don't sweat it. You could be just one mistake away from creating the next game-changing invention. And if not, well, at least you'll have a good story to tell. Oh, and don't forget to share your favorite oops-a moment with us in the comments below. Who knows? Maybe you've already made history without even realizing it.